Hello and welcome to the next session on incentive fee and performance fee calculation using hurdle rate and high watermark. This session is going to focus on some of the advanced application of incentive fee calculations. And we are going to discuss 3-4 different scenarios in this case. For example, let's say a high watermark, as we have understood earlier, could be 100,000 to start with. If we add a further hurdle rate, let's say, for example, 1% a month, to make it simple. So next month, high watermark plus hurdle rate could be 100,000 plus 1%, so 101,000. That could be the hurdle rate plus high watermark for next month. That will become a new benchmark for the investment manager to achieve in order to earn an incentive fee. However, there could be also a scenario when hurdle rate could be a simple addition or it could be a compounding one as well. So that means subsequent month, when we need to calculate the hurdle rate or and high water mark, it could be 101 plus 1,000, or because it is 1%, or it could be 101,000 times 1.01, which means hurdle rate can also compound rather than a simple addition month-on-month basis, right? Because just like a simple interest versus compound interest, the hurdle rate, which is a bare minimum return on the NAV to the investor before investment manager earn any incentive fee, that hurdle rate can be a simple addition as well as a compounding one. If it is compounding month-on-month basis, the scenario will be a little different. We are going to understand and analyze all of these with some of the examples through Excel calculations, and I will walk you through with some good calculation to elucidate all the nuances of incentive fee calculations. I'm sharing the Excel and screen so that we can walk through. So given the first scenario where we are calculating simple hurdle with quarterly crystallization, what does that really mean? Quarterly crystallization is, in case of months of calculation, in case of quarterly, we have simple 1, 2, and 3. So we will wait for 3 months or the entire quarter to end before incentive fee is crystallized, and high watermark, which is given here, will not adjust on month-on-month basis, because when the incentive fee is being crystallized on quarterly basis, hence high watermark for entire quarter, i.e. April, May, and June, will remain as it is in case of simple hurdle with quarterly crystallization. So let's start with an example of 500,000 of NAV in month of April. The profit is $3,438. High watermark is taken as 500K. So simple hurdle plus LIBOR, we are just taking this as a reference rate for the hurdle. So hurdle plus LIBOR, which we are going to use as a hurdle rate. Let's say we can update this as it is just to make it simpler. So hurdle rate is 5%. How many months has been passed in this quarter? 1 month. So hurdle rate will be 1 by, so 5% by 12, because this is understood to be annual hurdle rate. So 5% by 12 times the high water mark. So we can see here how it is calculating high water mark, because as we discussed earlier, if high water mark is 100,000, we need to add the hurdle amount. If the hurdle amount is, say, 1% per month or 12% per year, we need to just add 1% extra at the end of the month in order to reset the overall benchmark for investment manager, which means every month hurdle amount will be added on the high water mark for investment manager to achieve a higher amount of NAV. Once investment manager exceed that hurdle plus high water mark, only then incentive fee will be calculated. Let's see with an example here. So when we calculate the hurdle amount for the month, we add it with the high water mark, which is 502, as we can see here, and we calculate the excess. What is the meaning of excess? We have seen in earlier example that we compare the GAV, which is the gross NAV, with the benchmark amount, which means the high water mark plus hurdle rate is compared with the GAV. If GAV is higher than the high water mark plus hurdle combined, only then incentive fee will be calculated. In simple language, we agreed that high water mark plus hurdle is 502K. We also know that GAV of the month is 503, 438, which means here GAV is greater than HWM plus hurdle combined, because high water mark is not enough. We have seen in the examples earlier and earlier discussion that any investor would like to see not only high water mark achieved, but also a small amount to be added every month. Because if the same amount is kept in a, say, bond or post office in a secured bank, it will earn some interest anyway. Why would then investor will pay an incentive fee to the investment manager if that high water mark plus a bare minimum return is not met? So high water mark plus a risk-free rate has to be earned in order to incentive fee to calculate. Hence, high water mark plus hurdle combined is smaller than GAV here. In this case only, when the GAV is higher than the high water mark and hurdle, IF, which is incentive fee, will be calculated. So excess amount here is 1354 because this is smaller than GAV. So 135 is our incentive fee because incentive fee is really 10%. In this example, it could be 20%, it could be 15%, but we are taking this as 10% in this example, which we have used earlier as well. So this incentive fee will be adjusted from the GAV in order to arrive at the NAV. So we see here the GAV is taken from column E and NAV is adjusted with GAV subtracted by incentive fee. Now is NAV which is smaller than GAV here. So 135 is adjusted from GAV and we can calculate the NAV here. Now, number of shares are provided, GAV per share, NAV per share, everything can be calculated once we have the NAV and GAV here. So we divide these two number by number of shares and GAV per share and NAV per share can be calculated. Fast forward, we need to see, even though one thing that we also need to know, we have earlier discussed that high water mark is the highest NAV on which the incentive fee is calculated, right? So from that perspective, why I'm not taking, let's say 503,000 as high water mark here? That should be one question. And the answer is that since this is a quarterly incentive fee calculation and quarterly crystallization, as we can see here, 1, 2, and 3, that means we have to wait for the entire month to check the incentive fee. So since it is quarterly, we are not going to pay incentive fee until the end of the quarter. And that is why incentive fee will keep accruing upward or downward, right? So we have to see how the quarter ends. And if at the end of the quarter, incentive fee is paid, then the quarterly high water mark will adjust. That is why in case of the quarterly crystallization, the high water mark is kept as of start of the quarter high water mark. So we are going to take the start of April high water mark as the high water mark for the entire quarter because it is quarterly incentive fee, right? And that is why my high water mark is not changing. Next month, there is a loss of 14,439 and hurdle amount is also calculated. This time it is 2 by 12 because 2 months has passed and hurdle rate we know is 5%. So 5% divided by 2 by 12 times high water mark. Now we know hurdle amount is 4166 added to hurdle opening hurdle, which is 5K. We have a hurdle plus high water mark. Is this smaller than GAV? If we check, yes, this time there will be no incentive fee because ultimately high water mark and hurdle rate is higher than the GAV. So no incentive fee is calculated. In this case, GAV and NAV remains the same. The rest of the calculation is simple. Subsequently, third month, we again see there is overall loss for the month. 11,726 is a net loss. Fast forward, we calculate the hurdle amount using the reference rate and the number of months. We check the high water mark. Again, it is higher than the GAV, so no incentive fee is calculated in this month as well, which means GAV and NAV is same in the month of March as well. So what is really happening is, in this case, we come to month of July and we maintain the same incentive fee, same high water mark, and proceed with calculation of hurdle amount. So hurdle is, in this case, is not going to be calculated only for 1 month, because overall, if we look at, there is no crystallization of any incentive fee in the month of June, and high water mark, which was starting 500K, will be adjusted for 4 months in the month of July, because there is no incentive fee payment, there is no adjustment of incentive fee and high water mark. So investor would expect to get the high water mark adjusted by the continuous 4 months of hurdle, which means investor would expect 4 months of hurdle at the rate of 5% annually, and that's why we calculate high water mark times 4 months divided by 12 times the hurdle. Hence, we arrive at this hurdle amount, which we again add with the high water mark 5 million and arrive at 508K. Now, if we check what is the excess amount, high water mark plus hurdle with the GAV, there is a good news this time because there is a profit in the month of July. So we see there is an excess of 118K. 118K excess will result into 11,893 of incentive fee accrual, and this incentive fee will be adjusted from GAV. So GAV is 627, so we adjust 11,893. New NAV is 615, and rest of the calculation is simple enough. So this is how we calculate the high water mark, hurdle rate, etc. when there is a simple hurdle. Now we can move to the another situation when simple hurdle with quarterly crystallization. So this will be actually compound hurdle. So here what will happen is, so we'll keep the simple simple hurdle only. So in this example, what will happen is, we see there are more fluctuation in the profit. So for example, first month, the profit is 3,438. Second month, there is a loss. And in the month of June, there is a profit. So how it will change is, for the first month, we know hurdle amount 2083, 4166, and 6250. There's no change in the first 3 months of the calculation. What is changing is my excess amount. So we have noticed earlier that criteria is that the GAV has to be greater than high water mark plus hurdle rate combined. If this is the equation to follow, the high water mark here is smaller than GAV, which means GAV has exceeded the high water mark and hurdle rate combined. So this excess amount will be subject to incentive fee. So 10% of this is 13,274, and that is the incentive fee overall as of June. So our GAV and NAV both are reflecting this incentive fee calculation. Now, the interesting part here is we need to see how the incentive fee calculation and crystallization in the month of June is going to impact our high watermark calculations. So if we see 13,274 is a total incentive fee paid here in the month of June, but in the previous example, there was no incentive fee paid. Hence, there was no overall change in the high watermark, right? Let's see in this month or in this scenario, we have overall incentive fee paid to the tune of 13K. Hence, this incentive fee has reduced the GAV and new NAV is 625. If you see, this time high watermark has been adjusted as 625,000 using this number. In the past example, high watermark was not adjusted at all because there was no final incentive fee at the end of the quarter. Because when we look at June, there was no incentive fee to be paid overall, right? Hence, we have noticed and learned that in the month of July, high watermark will change only if in the previous quarter there was incentive fee paid and crystallized. So what happens to the hurdle amount? Hurdle amount will continue to accrue for all the 4 months. If it was, say, in the month of August, it will become 5 months. And that is because we are calculating this on quarterly basis. However, the hurdle will continue to go up because ultimately investor is not going to compromise on the bare minimum rate it must get. Hence, we are going to calculate the hurdle amount on all the months since the start of the year. Okay, so this is understood. Now, next example is for a little more complex scenario whereby the hurdle is compounded. It's not a simple hurdle. It is compounded because we discussed earlier, the hurdle can add for the next month's calculation. So hurdle plus high water mark can become the starting point for next month's hurdle calculation. So that is the compound hurdle, just like a compound interest rate. So starting with April, let's say how the profit is looking 3438, just like last a few examples. So hurdle amount is, as we know, what is the excess? 1354. We also saw that. It's plain vanilla for the month of April. In May, however, again there is a loss opening hurdle. Now, why this opening hurdle has come in this example? It was not there. That's something to note. It is because we do not have simple calculation this time. It is a compound hurdle, which means like my next month's baseline for calculation has to be closing of previous months, right? So opening hurdle is important in case of compound hurdle, because on the opening hurdle only the compounding will take place for the hurdle, isn't it? And if that happens, then my months of calculation will show only one. Why? Because if we keep adding 1, 2, 3, 4, like previous examples here, 1, 2, 3, 4, then we are double counting hurdle as well, because rather than saying 1 and 2 and 3 here, we are already adjusting the monthly impact here, because we are adding previous month's hurdle amount in the opening number, right? And also we are compounding. We are not just simply adding, we are compounding the effect of hurdle. So I'll just reinstate those numbers. Yeah. So we are just compounding the impact. That is why we are having opening hurdle as close of last month, and we are only adding 1 month in each line items. Okay, hope that is understood. So hurdle amount 2083 for the next month, as we can see, look, we are not taking 500K. We are taking the new adjusted hurdle for month of May, and we are calculating only for 1 month at the rate of 5%. That is how hurdle amount start to change. This column start to change in case of compounding, and a new column is created, or maybe a new column is utilized in case of a compound hurdle. So 2092, we add this number 2092 with the opening hurdle, because as it works in a compound interest, we always calculate the interest for the month and we add it to the opening number of the principal plus interest. So this is how it will get compounded. Again, as usual, we check the excess amount. We find out that, okay, GAV is smaller than high water mark and hurdle rate combined. So there is no incentive fee. Fast forward, GAV and NAV is the same. The rest is known. Next month, month of June, again, we check 504 is the opening hurdle. Why? Let's see. Because it has to be the end of the month, prior end of the month hurdle, right? So what is the prior end of the month hurdle? See, 500K 175. That becomes opening hurdle for the month of June. And then again, we calculate the new hurdle at the rate of 5%. So if I have to calculate manually, it will be something like this. 5% divided by 12 for the 12 months times opening hurdle, which is 504 170 175. That will become 2100.73, and this is what it is. So again, adding this number to my opening hurdle, it becomes 506. Do we have GAV higher than the hurdle plus high water mark? And answer is no, because it is a negative number. So that means our GAV is smaller than HWM plus hurdle. In fact, it is a compound one. So GAV is smaller, so there is no incentive fee, etc. Let's see in the month of July, what happens? In the month of July, we have a profit, small profit though. So again, what would be the opening hurdle? As we know, there is no incentive fee here, and hurdle has to continuously go up, as we have seen in the previous examples earlier as well. Investor will not compromise on the hurdle, so hurdle has to keep going up. So we take last month's closing hurdle, 506, apply 5% again, 2109. New hurdle plus high water mark becomes 508, and we check again, is that excess positive or negative? If the excess is negative, which means GAV is smaller than the high water mark and hurdle, then there is no incentive fee. That is why there is no incentive fee reflected here. So this is how we calculate a compound hurdle with quarterly crystallization. In the scenario 4, there's nothing much new, but just a couple of some very simple variations. For example, here, if you look at profit 3438, just like previous example. Next profit in the month of May, again negative. There's no profit in May, like previous example. However, in month of June, there is a profit in the last scenario, and this can twist the calculation a little bit, not much. So let's see how it works. Opening hurdle rate, just like prior month, it will be same. So our calculation of the hurdle amount is 2100 again. HWM plus hurdle is same as last month. However, the excess is positive, which means the test is positive here. GAV is higher than HWM plus hurdle total, which means it qualifies for yes for incentive fee. So 132 is the excess amount. Incentive fee calculated 10% here. Incentive for fee month to date here. So this much incentive fee will be deducted from the GAV, and NAV is now 625 for the month of June, and in fact for the entire quarter. So what should really happen in this case? Because in case of quarterly compounding or quarterly crystallization, if the incentive fee is paid in the last quarter, our high water mark will get adjusted. Okay, so if we adjust the high water mark in the month of July, what will happen to our new hurdle? Should we take the hurdle as this opening? In fact, should we take the opening hurdle as 506, or should we take the opening hurdle as the close of last month's NAV? It should be the close of last month NAV, because remember the example whereby we had established the rule high water mark or opening hurdle has to be the highest NAV or GAV at which incentive fee was paid historically. The highest NAV for incentive fee historically. So if we compare the high water mark plus hurdle here versus the closing NAV is higher because at this NAV incentive fee has been accrued and paid in the last quarter. So always take the last NAV at which incentive fee was paid. So opening hurdle will be 625K in this case. And again, we start monthly calculation of hurdle amount 2607, and we add this 2607 with this to make the new high water mark and hurdle as 628,000. Let's compare this amount with the GAV. Yeah, GAV is higher, slightly higher, only by $626. So we calculate $62 of incentive fee. It is reflected in negative because it is an expense at the fund level. So with this, we have calculated the GAV again and incentive fee, NAV, everything. So in this example, we discussed 4 different scenarios: simple calculation of hurdle rate, compounded hurdle rate, how to adjust the high water mark, when we need to take the high water mark as last month versus last quarter. So different scenarios we discussed in this chapter and in this section. And in the next video, we are going to talk about a couple of more complexities and nuances of incentive fee calculation. Thanks very much for watching, and see you in the next video.